Hey, y'all. Well, let's find our seats, and hopefully Rick was able to get you all a couple different things that will be helpful, not just today, but this month as we are entering into our missions month. There should be a handout for the Sunday school lesson, which will be really focused on that. And then also our missions month booklet. Keep that. Don't throw it away. I didn't order hundreds of copies, mind you. So keep that. And I tried to design that in such a way that you could use this as a personal prayer list for our missionaries in the back. I have the missionaries we support, and that way you can be praying for those in particular. Of course, some of you may know other missionaries that you're praying for, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I hope that you'll keep that as a prayer guide for our missionaries. Maybe even write down prayer requests as they come up. Even this morning, we'll be talking about the Brown family, which is on one of those first pages. You know what, Rick? Could I get a copy of one of those just to talk about today? That missions booklet. And so, we'll talk about the Browns. They're on page 5. Brian Brown and his family. I would put. Now, I want to be clear. I don't put the wives' names because it's a lot of room. So, but I'll tell you those as we get to each of them. But let's think about some ways we can be praying for each other here in just a moment. Obviously, just a couple of announcements. Don't forget the missionary gift card signups. It'd be good to get those taken care of really today, especially donating for what you've covered. That way, we won't do a bouquet for Gary Ridge, but for the two missionaries that are coming in on the 17th, 24th, we'd like to get that lined out by the end of this weekend if possible. And then also, of course, you'll see in your Missions Month booklet on page number 3, kind of a layout of Missions Month, what's coming up, and to talk about that. We'll talk about that more in detail here in just a moment, and encourage you to be thinking about that, okay? As well as a big thing happening in August, apart from Missions Month, is Lord willing, we'll start up our Wednesday night kids ministries as well as our adult small group Bible study on August 27th. If you're interested in serving in the kids ministry, we could use some more volunteers for that. Please sign up for that, and then Robert will get in touch with you. And then as well, I have some info there about our Wednesday night adult Bible study, which I think would be a good move for many of you to invest your week in that. And I explain that more in the bulletin. Okay. I want to talk about a couple ways we could be praying this morning for each other and for one of our missionaries. Okay. So first of all, I want to talk about our missionary Brian Brown and his wife Heidi. They're pictured there on the screen. And I don't have a printed prayer letter for you, but I did message Brian and Heidi, and I want to read to you what they said we could be praying for. And if I could get a volunteer, a man or a woman right now who'd be willing to just pray, I'll give you very clearly what to pray for here in a moment. If I could get someone who'd be willing to pray for Brian and Heidi. Is there someone who'd be willing to pray for this couple this morning? Judson, thank you. And I'm going to read their prayer letter. So this is what Heidi asked for prayer for. And I encourage you guys to pray for this. You can even write this in your booklet if you want to continue to pray for them. Some of these are long-term requests, okay? Specifically, Judson, if we could be praying for Heidi's health. Heidi's had some health struggles long-term, but specifically she's got pneumonia and bronchitis, so be praying for that. Also, church, just an update on their ministry. We want to praise God that, if you'll remember, when Brian was with us, was it last year, 2 years ago? He was pastoring / leading 3 different churches at the same time. So they have a kind of a main church and then 2 church plants, and he would spend all Sunday going from one church to the next, preaching, farther and farther out from the city of Monterey. The two church plants now are established and have their own pastor and are running all their own services. So we want to praise God for that. But as a good missionary, can you guess what Brian has done? They started another church. And so be praying for their new church plant. I'm trying to find the city, although I don't expect you to pronounce it. Oh, it's easy. Santiago Baptist Church. So what they do is their strategy is they have a main church that Brian pastors. They're training up men. There's a pipeline of future pastors that are being trained up in their church. And then they start a church, and then Brian is directly involved in that for 3 years, working alongside the future pastor of that church. Make sure, of course, he's staying faithful to the Lord and his family, and then they hand that off. And so it's kind of a 3-year process, and you can imagine the kind of toll that takes on a family, right? One church is a lot of work, but 2 is a lot of work. So be praying for them as they're working on the Santiago church plants. And then also, lastly, if you could be praying for their oldest son, Kyle, who is in Australia. He's a missionary to Australia with his wife. They've been there since November. Be praying specifically for the visas, which are the documents they need to stay there more permanently as missionaries. So their oldest son, Kyle, has actually been sent out of their church in Monterrey, Mexico, to be a missionary in Australia. And so be praying for Kyle. His wife's name is Salma, and we could be praying for that. So Judson, I'm going to have you pray for that. Real quickly, are there any ways we can be praying for each other as a church? Before we do that, could I get a volunteer that'd be willing to pray for these other prayer requests for our church? Real quick, could I get a volunteer to pray for these other requests for our church? Anyone else? All right, Robert. I want to encourage you, church family, to show your love for the saints by being willing to pray for them. Publicly, it would be great. I really appreciate Robert and Judson. They pray basically every week for y'all. I would love for more folks to get involved in that. I think that'd be a good sign of a willingness to care for one another in that way. Certainly be praying for them privately. Let me give you one personal request. If you could be praying for this. This week, I'll be ministering in Wellington, Texas. I'll be preaching for them on Wednesday night. And then also, really could use your prayers. I'll be preaching at a teen youth retreat for their church. And so just be praying for God to help me with the messages of that and just to connect with those teens and to minister to them. Be praying for that. I would appreciate that. I certainly need the Lord's help. Even just choosing messages is really, really hard when you don't know someone's teen group. So be praying for that. Any other prayer requests we could be praying for as a church? Any ways we could be praying for y'all? Judson.
Try to keep this quick, but my mom has some health troubles. So most of y'all know she had bypass surgery about 3 months or so ago. The underlying issue that she's been trying to solve for 3-4 years or so, she has some numbness in one of her feet that's been driving her out the wall. Well, she recently had some sort of scan and checkup with her doctor, and they discovered that there was something that was written in her, all of her medical information that was never told to her, and it describes the issues she's been having to a T, and it sounds like it is a fairly simple fix, but just pray for wisdom and guidance for my mom and also Dad as he's there with her.
Yeah, absolutely. Does she have a procedure or appointment? Okay. Yeah, be praying for that. Judson's mom had was it triple bypass or something crazy a couple months ago? Very serious heart surgery. Maybe 2 different heart surgeries now that I think about it. So, Robert, if you could pray for that. Any other ways we could be praying for one another, y'all? Anything? All right, Robert, I'll have you pray. Judson, you pray first, and then Robert, and then we'll get into the lesson this morning.
Lord, as we come before you, just want to lift Brian Brown and his wife in prayer. Lord, just want to ask that you would give Heidi some comfort and some healing from this bronchitis and pneumonia that she has. show fruit. Lord, I also pray that you would be with their son that's down in Australia. I just pray that you would help them to get the visas that they're needing.
Amen.
Heavenly Father, we do just thank you for just bringing us together today to worship and praise you, Lord. We just thank you for each one that's here today, each brother and sister, Lord, that know you as their Savior, Lord. We just thank you for them being here. Lord, just ask you to continue to bless and be strengthen them, Lord. Help us to draw together and lean on one another for those needs that arise in our life, Lord. Lord, we all have struggles, we all have times of weakness, Lord. It's just good to know that we can count on one another, that we're here for each other. Lord, we do think of Pastor as he's going down to Texas this week. Just be with him. Lord, guide him, direct those messages that he needs to bring. Lord, just with the Holy Spirit, Lord, just reveal to him the needs that are there and provide the content, the messages that we want to them.
Amen.
Draw them closer to you. Lord, we think of Justin Small, Lord, we just pray that as they're trying to make these decisions, Lord, about this procedure, that you give them wisdom and guidance and direction. Lord, just pray for the doctors as they continue to address this situation. Lord, just help them and just give them the foresight and knowledge and things to be able to do things wisely and correctly for her. Lord, we just pray that you'll just be there providing for them for everything that they need. Lord, we just thank you again.
Amen. Alrighty. Well, I want to talk a little bit about our missions month. Let me ask you this question. Why have a missions month or missions conference, whatever, missions emphasis Sunday? Doesn't really matter how we do it. This is a participatory question, so I want to just kind of get your feedback. Why should we do this? Just get some thoughts real quick. Micah? Yes, that's a great one. To remind us of missionaries that maybe we've forgotten about. Good. What else? What are some other reasons it might be good for us as a church? Set aside some time and focus on this topic. Louder, please. To know who the missionaries are. Good. Like that. What else? Yes, to go remember the Great Commission, right? What else? Why else do we do this? Remind us to pray for them. What were you going to say? See their needs. Good. Anything else? Good. I like that. We know what the Great Commission says, right? We know that one of the reasons that we have Missions Month, one of the reasons we have this is because Christ commanded us, right? Go and teach all nations, like Melissa said. Also, we know that from the very inception of Christianity, there has been a relationship between missionaries and churches. There's been a partnership relationship, which, as maybe a couple of you mentioned, that involves prayer, but also involves financial support, right? As Philippians talks about, right? And I think, as I think you talked about, Micah, that we have a tendency to forget this. I kind of, as I was thinking about this, I think it's good as a church. We should always be asking, why do we do this? Right? It wouldn't be good for us as a church to spend time and money on things that don't matter, right? I think of three primary goals that summarize a lot of what you guys said. Why do we have a missions month? Number one, to acquaint the church with actual missionaries. You'd actually be surprised how rare this is. A lot of churches, you don't see a lot of missionaries coming through the church. I think that's pretty important. I want you to be acquainted not just with the missionaries we support, though I've intentionally scheduled our missions months around missionaries we support being home. That's why last year was in February, this year it's in August, because I want to work around Dallas Brown's schedule because there's a variety of logistical reasons why it's good for us to have our own missionaries that we currently support in the church during a month like this. But also missionaries we might support in the future. I really think if the Lord allow us to grow our financial base, which we really need to for missions, the Cook family would be a wonderful long-term investment. Of course, obviously, you need to see that for yourselves. Number two, to remind the church of its responsibility in global missions. Hopefully this is happening from the pulpit more than just Missions Month. And this is why I'm trying to, for the last couple months, have us praying for a missionary every single Sunday school. I think that would be a really profitable way to use our prayer request time, wouldn't it? We don't have 20,000 missionaries. We have, I think, 11 or 12. And so once a quarter, we're praying for every single missionary. I think that's a good investment of our time. But also, there's other ways our church can be involved. Yes, giving. Yes, prayer. But short-term trips, long-term trips, right? Even becoming a sending church for a missionary. There's many ways that our church has a responsibility in this. And then one that you all didn't mention, but actually is, I think, one of the logistical primary things we do Missions Month for is to receive a new year of missions pledges. Some of you might know this by the name Faith Promise or whatever. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, right? The idea is at our church, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, that the way that we fund missions is not siphoning money out of the general budget, though some churches do that, that's not wrong. The way that we fund missions at Fellowship Baptist Church is through a missions pledge system that is on top of our normal giving to the church. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. What I want us to do in the next few moments is I want to just lay out where our church has been in its heart for missions and where I think we should go. Okay? I tend to think you all would probably agree with everything I'm going to say, so it's not like I'm inventing anything. Also, most of the things I'm going to say are things our church has done in the past. And so I want to talk a little bit. Some of you could add a lot more to the first section of this lesson because you've been here longer than me. But I've also talked with our missionaries a lot, and I've caught this from talking to them. So I want to talk a little bit about the missions DNA of Fellowship Baptist Church. I like that because it's in our DNA. That's why if you go to our historical display back there that we built on the 75th anniversary of the church, it has missions on it because missions is in our DNA. But I would say to you, church, that we have ways we can grow in our missions heart. I'm talking about Fellowship Baptist Church, what it is right now, I think can grow in its heart for missions. So let me talk about the DNA. Where's our church been? What has been the character of our church in relationship to missions? Number one, we have the DNA of financially supporting missionaries. I mean, that's kind of the base, right? If you go on our wall in the foyer, so we have our historical timeline. I'm not as a fan of the other side of the wall because it has my picture on it, and I'd rather not. But that was there before I got here in a lot of ways. But you'll see a line of pastors. And I love looking at that because I love thinking about the ways each of those men have left an imprint on our church. The first pastor of our church, his name is Clifford Clark. He started the church, got it going, was here 3 years, and went on and pastored in Tulsa, I believe, right after this. But what's interesting about our founding pastor is that Clifford Clark is actually given credit for pioneering the form of missions funding we practice now called Faith Promise or Missions Pledges. Clifford Clark and another pastor knew a Canadian businessman who had somehow implemented this at his church in Canada, and they're the ones, because they're kind of popular pastors in the States at the time, that started promoting this idea that we can raise more money for missions if we convince God's people that it's worth them giving a little bit extra on top of their tithes to fund missions. And he was right. I've been a part of several different churches, and I'll say that churches that fund this way, if there's generous people in the pews, who recognize as Americans we have a unique ability to give more than other countries do often, that you can fund missions a lot larger than you could if you were trying to siphon off of general offerings. And so this has been part of our DNA for 75 plus years, partnering with missionary endeavors. I wish I had more numbers, but I don't think it'd be possible to get these, but I would reckon our church has supported hundreds of missionaries over the years and sent a lot of money across the globe, right? And no matter where our church has been, whether it's been bigger or smaller, our church has been committed to financially supporting missionaries who, number one, are doing missions work, number two, are philosophically aligned with the church, and number three, are regularly communicating with the church. You don't want to give money to people who you don't really know what they're doing, right? And then on the back of your handout, I gave you some basic numbers of what we brought in 2024, what we brought in thus in 2025, and what we've sent out. All of our missions money goes in the pockets of missionaries. All of it. All of it. And because I wouldn't mind taking on missions organizations, but really even right now, our money is solely focused on people doing the work of missions in their foreign field. I think what you'll notice is that, and the reason I want to show you these numbers is not to guilt you, but I want you to see the reality of what we're doing, what we can do, what we should do. You'll see that the margins are pretty razor thin. There's not, if one regular missions giver dropped, I'd have to drop a missionary immediately. I think that's probably not a good thing, right? And I praise God for those who give. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I just want you to see those numbers. Here's number 2. What is our DNA? Fellowship has a DNA of being a ascending base for missionaries. I want to explain this term because I think some of you may not be aware of the difference between a supporting church, a sponsoring church, and ascending church. Ascending church is different than a sponsoring or supporting church. For years, we were ascending church for 2 missionaries. You'll see them pictured in the foyer, Chuck Smith, and then his son, Roger Smith, to Brazil. Ascending church is different than a supporting church in these ways. Ascending church is the primary spiritual accountability for that missionary on the field. In that, the pastor and the members are the ones who are spiritually holding that person accountable, making sure emotionally and spiritually they're doing well. Now, we have that kind of relationship with all our missionaries because that's what good Christians do. But it's not my job, nor yours, to call up Brian Brown and say, brother, you really need to consider coming off the field for these reasons. Your family's not doing well or whatever. That's not our job because we're not the ascending church, right? Ascending church often has a higher financial responsibility, right? They work with them for emergency needs, emergency funding, travel, a place to stay when they're in the U.S. temporarily, and then ideally, though some churches don't practice it this way, ascending churches should be providing a large percentage of their support. So I just highlight that to say, number one, I think our church should get there long term. Really, I'm thinking in the next 5 years about some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. I'd love for our church to be a sending base for missionaries. I think our church is very equipped to do that in a lot of ways that other churches may not be logistically. But this has been part of our church's DNA. Number 3, FBC has the DNA of short-term missions trips to visit our missionaries. When I talk to our missionaries, and I've done this several times through phone calls or Zoom calls or whatever, one of the things that's been most meaningful to our missionaries, and they bring it up as if it happened yesterday. The memory to them is so fond, it's as if it happened yesterday. I was talking to Roger Smith. Our church has been Roger's sending church for a while. He switched his sending church to a sending church in Florida within the last 10 years. But the thing that Roger mentioned to me when he was just trying to tell me one of the things he appreciated about this church, before he mentioned $1 we sent, was the times that our church visited him on the field. And I say our church visited him, not just Mike McVeigh. Though I think one of the strengths of that man's tenure as a pastor was that he went to our missionaries. As well as Lloyd Gross, I think, was really good about that. But during Mike's tenure, there were several, I think it was Mike's tenure, I could be wrong about this, there were several church missions trips, maybe not huge, but several members went to Brazil to go visit the ministries of these brothers and sisters to encourage them, right? And so that has been really meaningful to our missionaries, and that's part of our church's DNA that I think needs to be revived. So I want to talk to you a little bit, where should our missions program be going within the next 5 years? That's kind of an artificial timeline. I'm not God, okay? But I'm just telling you, church, why would I ask you to give another pledge to missions funding? Where is that going to go? Let's say if the Lord does this, and many folks who maybe aren't participating in missions in any regular way decide this year that that's what God wants them to do. What would we do with the money that's given? What would we do? Well, I want to tell you what our plan is for missions money. And again, the idea would be to grow our base of mission support. Here's the first thing. What is the plan for the next 5 years? Robust financial backing of partner missionaries. What should our church be doing the next 5 years? We should be moving towards robust financial backing. Now, someone help me here. What do you think I mean by robust? What do we mean? What does that word mean? I'm gonna not let Robert participate because some of y'all I think are being a little bit stubborn today. What do you think I mean by robust? What do you think the word robust means in this context? I think it's on the tip of Adam's tongue. I could just tell. Give it a shot. No one's gonna slap you if you get it wrong, right? Yeah, Melissa. Increasing. That's right. Robust means like heavy. It means well supported, right? Robust. Here's what I mean by robust. I mean higher monthly support. And I want to explain why I think our church should move this direction. Why our church, if we raise money, why it's better for you to give money to the missions program here so that we can more robustly support our partner missionaries and maybe take one or two on in the future. Why would that be our goal rather than just increasing the number of missionaries we support? You'll see on the back of your handout that I just laid out what we support our missionaries as monthly. If you want justifications for why some are different than others, I can explain to you later. There's good logic behind that. Number one, because we don't have enough money to give everyone a raise. But I want to explain to you why, as our missions money grows, one of our primary financial goals, I think, should be that we should raise the support level of our missionaries, okay? Many years ago, there's a trend in the church world to try and just, at least in churches like ours that fund missions this way, let's have as many partner missionaries as possible, because wouldn't it be cool that at our missions conference we could have a flag for every missionary support, and the more flags, the cooler it is, right? You know, instead of 10 flags of countries you're invested in, 50 flags. It's more fun, right? And the idea there was we want to have some fingers in every country, and I love that idea. I think there are downsides to that. Our church doesn't have the budget to even do that. But I want you to think about this. What would happen, church, if we had a more robust backing of all of the missionaries that we're bought into long-term as a church? What would happen there? I think, number one, it would create a more meaningful relationship with them. Would you agree with this? The more you invest your money in something, the more you care about it. Is that true? Most of you, I would reckon, when your property tax statement comes in every year, you're watching that thing like a hawk, right? Especially living in this area, right? You're like, what's the mill levy today, you know? But yet, when Disney Plus raises the subscription $2 a month, you're like, $2, you know, right? And so I think the reality is, as a church, if our church takes the approach that we're going to have a heavy financial investment in less missionaries than we could if we just gave them all $50 a month, then I think what it creates is it's more buy-in from the people in the pews, because we see that we're investing in these people more heavily. Secondly, church, what you need to realize is that missions work is like way, 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 way more expensive now than it was even 20 years ago. Way more. Crazy amounts of money more. Just to give you an idea, there are some missionaries that to minister in certain fields that are more first world, they need to raise $10,000 a month in support. Now do the math. If everyone's supporting at $100 a month, which actually is pretty average support level, how many partners do you need to raise $10,000 a month to go to a first world country and plant churches in some of these very post-Christian places? How many partner missionaries would you need at $100 a month to get to 10,000? 100. Now, I don't know about you. How many of y'all have 100 close friends you keep in contact with regularly? None of you. I know you don't, right? I don't even have that, right? It's impossible to stay connected with that many people and stay accountable to that many people, right? But if you have 5, 10, 20 people who are backing your ministry financially, what that does is then the missionary is more connected to the church. And friends, I don't know about you, I think it's good for our church to have missionaries that are more deeply connected with our church, right? I would love it if our missionaries see our church as a place that they should come more than one Sunday. They should hang around for a Sunday or 2 or 3 because our church is so financially invested in them, right? Thirdly, think about this from a logistics perspective. The number one thing that keeps missionaries off the field, number one thing that keeps them off the field, that gets them off the field, and prevents them from going to the field, the number one thing is they can't raise enough support. Why? Because so many churches are giving such small amounts. It's really difficult. If you want to get 100 partner churches, you want to know how many churches you need to go visit and present your ministry to? Like 200. And so I want to present to you, church, that if we invest in a more robust financial background of our partner missionaries, here's what we're doing. I know it's harder to see this, and it's hard to feel the emotional buy into this. But what we're doing is we're getting missionaries to the field quicker. We're making sure they don't get off the field, because as a church, we're gonna back them when their support drops, maybe. And they're enabled to, when they come home, think about this. Dallas Brown is on furlough, which means he's taking a several-month break from his foreign missionary context. Dallas Brown has not been in America for I think 7 years. You realize Dallas and his wife, I think her name is Ashley, I'd have to look in the booklet. You realize they have parents in America, right? They have cousins. They have family. But Dallas on his furlough is obligated to visit most or all of his partner churches. So here's what happens. When missionaries have more partner churches, what happens? They have less family time. Less family time. I don't know about you, but if I was a foreign missionary, the number one thing that would make me want to leave is that I never see my family. So I want to help our missionaries be around and rested more. I think furlough should be more about rest than it is reporting to dozens of different places, right? And so this is why, church, I think it's wise for us to consider moving in the direction of more financial support to either the same number, maybe a fewer number as some retire as our missionaries. I'd love to see us within 3 to 5 years be able to support all of our missionaries at $300 a month. Because I think that would be better for them and better even for our church. Now, this means that we're going to be more careful about who we take on, right? I mean, if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to put a big chunk of money into this person, you're going to be like, well, let me think about this for a minute, Let me make sure this is aligned, right? Friends, if in order for this to happen, in order for the church to have a robust financial backup partner missionaries, what does that require from the church? It requires a robust financial investment in missions, right? And I'm not preaching to you something I don't practice, okay? If you want, I'll give you my missions giving record if you're really concerned about this. I believe this, and trust me, I don't make gobs of money, okay? I paid well enough to live, which is great. I'm not suffering. But I'm telling you, as someone who makes probably less than a good chunk of you in this room, I believe this. And I think, church, it's worth your money to invest more in missions than you do in eating out. It's worth your money to invest more in missions than you do TV subscriptions. It's worth it to invest chunks of money into missions, because I think that the dominance of the command to reach the world should weigh on us more than the desire for worldly comforts. Now again, we all have worldly comforts, nothing wrong with that. I have worldly comforts, you have worldly comforts. But we can't do this without us all being bought in, right? And so that's why I'm trying to persuade you of that this morning. Here's number two. Number two. This one's just as close to my heart. Just as close to my heart. Number two. Church, I think that the greatest area our missions program suffers is in number two. That I want our church, and I mean the church members, not just the pastor, to stay regularly connected with our missionaries through prayer and moral support from the church membership. Prayer and moral support from the church membership. Let me explain this a little bit, okay? Our missionaries, one of their greatest needs is financial. In fact, Dallas Brown is off the field primarily because he went to the field as just a married couple, and now he has, is it 2 kids that he has now, right? Do you think Dallas Brown's expenses are higher or lower now than they were 7 years ago? Do you think inflation has made his expenses higher or lower than they were 7 years ago? He's in Africa. There's inflation in Africa, right? Well, this brother needs to raise more money. He's been on the mission field for 7 years, and now he's got to not just visit his old friends. He's got to go make new ones. That's why I've tried to help him get a partner missionary, a church that he's going to go present to on Sunday night. He's not going to be at our church on Sunday night. He's going to be down the road trying to raise some support at a church that I'm connected with, right? But I want you to think about this church. You know what are some of the real problems our missionaries encounter? More than just money, they encounter unimaginable loneliness. Unimaginable loneliness. They encounter deep spiritual battles. They encounter discouragement from the ministry that sometimes is actually irrational. Everything's going well, but they feel terrible about what they're doing. They feel like it's not working. They live with a deep-seated frustration because people just aren't getting it. They wonder in their heads, should I be here? Did I pick the wrong country? Does anybody care about me? They have doubts whether it's fair for their kids to live across the ocean from their own grandparents and cousins. They live in countries where they will never be treated as part of the community because of the color of their skin or their background. Did you know every problem I just mentioned can't be solved with money? And honestly, it's the ones they feel more often. If we're invested in the spiritual and emotional health of our missionaries, church, I think it's necessary for us to see our role in missions to be just as much as this as it is financial. We shouldn't just give money but offer nothing on this end, nor should we just offer prayer and moral support and not be financially invested. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, right? There will your heart be also. And friends, I'm telling you as someone who knows a fraction of what this feels like. I minister as a pastor, like these brothers do, and it comes with a unique set of challenges that I didn't really know until I got into this job. But I don't minister in a different country. I'm an hour away from some of my best friends that I've known for a decade. These folks are not. And so I want to encourage you to think about this. And I want to share personally. I know some of you may not understand this, but I've told people many, many times, I would not be in Garden City still. I would not be a pastor of this church still. Yes, there's been support in this church. I'm not minimizing that. But also, I've received incredible moral and prayer support from people who are not members of this church. I would not be here without that. I would not be here without it. And I want to persuade you, church, that you can be that for someone else. I want to persuade you that you should be that for someone else. That you should be praying for and regularly offering moral support. We don't have a lot of missionaries, and I think that's one good thing about that is it's not hard, I think, to wrap your head around the people we support. It's not a lot of people. It's less than a dozen, right? And we're bringing them up every week. So I want to challenge you to do a couple things. In the future weeks, I'm going to offer you a chance to give your email to sign up to receive every single prayer letter from every missionary we support that I receive. So you'll hear about missionary needs quicker than I do, probably, depending how quick you read your email. So I want to challenge you to do that. The reason I want you to do that is because sometimes it takes 3 months to get to the next missionary that we're going to pray for, right? Because we're praying for one a week. So it's 3 months between praying for the Browns. Well, it would be better if you just prayed for them as soon as they put their prayer letter out. It would be better for you not just to pray for them, but to click the reply button on the email and say, hey, my name is, I'm a part of this church in this city, and I just want you to know I prayed for you. Every missionary I've done that to, they've been so incredibly grateful. And church, you would be shocked how few people do that. You'd be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised if most of these missionaries send their prayer letter to over 100 people and regularly hear back from 4 or less, if that, right? So I want to encourage you to think about that. Otherwise, I want you to think about this, church. You could, if your heart's a giving heart, you could say, you know what I'm going to do? I know of a church who does this. You can say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get the birthdays of these kids down, and I'm going to send that missionary an Amazon gift card every time their kid's birthday rolls around. The amount of money is not the significant thing. You might be like, I can't afford to give their kid a bunch of money. 10, 15 bucks. Do you know how encouraging that would be? That someone somewhere else cares about your kid? Man, what an encouragement that would be. So I want to encourage you, church, to think about prayer and moral support for our missionaries. This is why, by the way, we bring them home. This is why we bring them to the church. Because what I want you to do, many of you are like me, you've not met Dallas Brown. How many of you have never personally met Dallas Brown? Raise your hand. Raise your hand real quick. I know most of you have not met Dallas. Raise your hand if you've not personally met Dallas Brown. Judson, have you met Dallas Brown? Oh, wow. More of you. Will's hands raised. You all met Dallas Brown? Good, good. Have you met Dallas Brown? I didn't think so, right? Yeah. How many of you have met Eli and Mackenzie Cook? No one, right? Right? How many of you have personally met Abdu Isa? One of you. You know what I mean? I'm hoping we can get him next year. So I'm just telling you, the reason we do this is so you have face, you've interacted with them, and I think that helps you be connected long-term with them. It's going to be on you to do that. I'm not saying you should be their best friend. You probably won't be. I'm just saying, send them an email, you know? I could tell all sorts of stories about that. Here's the last thing. Where should our missions program be going? What does it look like for Fellowship Baptist Church? This is another way to ask the question. What does it look like for this church to be a missions-minded church? Financial support that's robust, prayer and moral support, and then number 3, a culture of short-term visits to the mission field. A culture, this has been part of our church's culture already. The Bible is clear. Lamentation says this, my eye affects my heart. We bring our missionaries here to affect your heart, but I would argue, church, if you have the means every once in a while, this isn't going to happen every year. Some of you have the means to do this, though. Most of you have the means to do this if you're intentional about it. I want you to think about, maybe it'd be good for me to go there. Let me ask you this. How many of you bought a house without seeing it in person? I knew you did. Anyone else here bought a house without seeing it in person? Okay. Why? Now, you probably had pictures that were good. Otherwise, you definitely would have bought it, right? We're tactile, visual people. We don't invest in things heavily unless we've seen them, touched them, experienced them. I'm telling you the same is true for missions. I would argue this, that a missions trip would help your spiritual life more than teen camp did. It'd help your kids even more than a teen camp would. I'm telling you, a missions trip will change your life. I personally have not gone. I'm making a plan to go to the field next year to visit one of our missionaries. I know this because my wife has experienced this. My wife would tell you, the thing that helped her the most as a teenager was when she was a junior in high school, she went on a missions trip to China. My in-laws have done multiple missions trips, right? I'm making plans to do a missions trip next year for one of our missionaries. Because think about this. It feels great when someone sends you an email that says, I love you, I'm praying for you, and I'm supporting you. You're doing a good job. That's great. I've gotten random emails like that, and they mean a lot. It's totally different when someone gets on a flight, invests their vacation fund, shows up on your mission field, lives in your world, pats you on the back, and says, you're doing a good job. We've got your back. And I'm just telling you, the work that these folks do is crazy hard. And they need that backing. They would be blessed by that. I think our church would gain from this. If there were 3 families who'd go on a mission trip, I think it would change our church. Why? Well, wouldn't it help our desire to pray if we visited these people? It would help our connection if we visited them. Would it help our worldview if we had a better understanding of how the world works and what it's like in other countries? Now, some of you, you're like, this would be financially impossible. I would argue if you have the finances to take any vacation, you have the finances to take a missions trip. It may not be every year. I don't think for most of you, you should do that every year. But it might require some planning and commitment. And I think it'd be a good thing for us to move there. So, and even if for our church to be so bought into this, if in the long-term future we had the backing for the church to be invested in this to help with some of the costs of this, I think that would be a good thing as well. Friends, missions is more than just a side hustle of the church. Missions is not our side hustle. Missions is our calling. And God has called our church to be concerned about forming a global kingdom. And I just want to show you what we can do to make a real impact on these people. But I'm calling you to be a participant in it. I'm calling you to be a participant in it. All right? Lord, we thank you for the wonderful folks we support on the mission field. Truly, I'm honored that our church gets a role in their lives. I pray you'd help our church over the next 4 weeks to just be bought in the idea that missions is not our side hustle. Missions is who we are.